It was just a few months ago that the press was in love with North Korea because of their impressive Olympic delegation and publicly feared President Trump was about to start a war with them. Remember that? Well, during yesterday's summit, the president was friendlier. So was MSNBC. Happy? No. Here's the selection.
It is not knowable that we'll ever know what happened in that meeting, because both men are known and established liars.
I would say it's somewhat disgusting. It is actually a debasement of the American flag.
Donald Trump can relate to authoritarians. He, as a former businessman, he likes absolute control, and
is he a wannabe despot?
I've conceded that for years now.
And the frenzy continued over at the Washington Post. Ishan Tharoor said that the summit showed Trump's, quote, affinity for dictators. CNN analyst and avid pro-war activist Max Boot dismissed the whole summit as something any U.S. prior president could have achieved, though none did. In The Week magazine, David Linker said that even a successful summit would be bad because it would improve Trump's approval ratings. And that, quote, could only be considered positive if you think it's a good thing for our mendacious, hapless, impetuous, racist president to enjoy an unprecedented boost to his popularity. In other words, if it works, that's bad because Trump will benefit. Joe Concha covers media for The Hill, and he joins us tonight. So you've been watching the coverage, Joe. Sum it up for us.
Well, that last line is interesting because it sounds a lot like Tucker, Bill Maher on Friday night, who said, bring on a recession, even if it cripples families and people across the country, because that would be the only thing that could get Trump from being reelected. In other words, and by the way, Maher is worth, something like $100 million. He gets $10 million a year. So if Trump is gone, who cares if we go to war or if we go to recession? As long as liberals can triumph in terms of getting rid of Trump, that's all that matters. But I noticed in that montage, it was very interesting. He played Nicole Wallace, and she used to be a member of the Bush administration, right? She was a communications director. You played Elise Jordan, who was a member of the Bush administration. I heard Jeremy Bash, who was in the Obama administration, the DOD. What do all these people have in common? They all worked in administrations that failed miserably in stopping North Korea's nuclear program. So if you're a viewer and you're sitting at home, you have to ask yourself this very question. Why are we listening to these people? I mean, they failed in Iran, Syria, Iraq, you name it, depending on the administration. And they're presented as experts when obviously they have an agenda because they want to protect either their own legacies or the legacies of their bosses. It would be like turning to Jack Kevorkian to teach a class in the Heimlich maneuver. It's a complete contradiction.
It's a very good point.
That was organic.
But couldn't that be said? Well, it's apt. But couldn't that be said of so many different issues in which analysts on television are implicated in failing policies that were rejected by voters? And so why wouldn't their contempt be baked in? Why wouldn't they hate all of this? Because it basically points up how badly they did their jobs.
Right, and it's the uncouth president that is actually succeeding in this case. I mean, I understand the criticism completely around whether this is a success or not, because they're very broad strokes. But then again, we're in the first out of the first inning, and unless every I is dotted and T is crossed, then it's being considered a failure. But to your point earlier with another guest, think of where we were in August when President Trump said that North Korea will see a fire and fury like the world has never seen. And if you go back and read those headlines, we were on the precipice of World War III. Guam was being threatened. We had actual maps of what nuclear missiles could hit Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. Think of where we were then, and think of where we are now in terms of talking to this leader, having them agree, at least in broad strokes, around denuclearization. That is progress. No matter how you try to spin it, that has to be seen as progress, except it's not presented that way because there's always a reflex to the negative when it comes to this administration, even in the most obvious situation when there really isn't much negative things to complain about when you put it in the full context.
Very quickly, is there any indication that any of these self-described experts knows anything about North Korea at all?
I don't know if many people know much about North Korea, right? I mean, how many of them have actually been there? Any journalist, for that matter, or any experts in this regard. So I would say no. And again, when you have a Clinton, a Bush, and an Obama administration that failed over 25 years doing the same thing in terms of nice talk and appeasement, and then somebody else comes in and does something different, you are in no position whatsoever to complain about these things. And that's the final point I want to make, Tucker, that we're very good in this business about complaining about stuff, and that's all I've heard over the last 48 hours. Complaint. But when you're watching this coverage, listen for this. Is anybody offering an alternative or a solution as to what they would do as opposed to what they've witnessed over the last 48 hours? Because I haven't seen it yet, Tucker.
Or how about just stand back and be amazed for a minute? Because it is amazing. That's how I feel about it anyway. Joe, great to see you. Thank
Stunning. Your guest used stunning before, and that's correct.
It's true. Thanks.